The framing of this question is really interesting.
Why do you say that if I'm going to be a Christian again, then I need to repent from being LGBTQI+, and then accept this narrow version of the gospel? That to me is like conversion therapy, and the UN and all these other major medical organizations in the US and around the world have called that torture. So for you to stand here and to defend that, that's pretty messed up.
There is no object.
Okay, so for starters, it's interesting that this person acknowledged this person's appeal to authority was the UN and medical institutions regarding what they believe about LGTV transformer issues. Did you guys catch it? So the entire thing is an appeal to authority fallacy. You are assuming that the UN and the medical association and all these people have our best interest in mind. Aren't these the same people that wanted to lock everybody in their houses and tell them not to go outside and get fresh air or sunlight for like 2 years? These are the same people. So why would we take these people seriously? Like I really mean that. Like, why would we take these people seriously? I think the scientific consensus is, in hindsight, we look back at, the Rona as a net negative, at like the way we responded to it, like as a complete net negative, right? And I'm not saying it wasn't real, and I'm not saying the jab is going to give you a third leg. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying we look back at it and we go, yeah, no, that was a stupid idea. Let's lock everybody in. Let's tell them not to go on walks, not to go outside, to stay indoors, to avoid people and social interactions, not go to their churches, and avoid germs. And that got us where? That got us to higher levels of deaths of despair, higher levels of depression, higher levels of social anxiety, and higher self-deletion rates. At CDC, like these people completely struck out. Just recently they struck out, right? So this is the issue. And they, by the way, these are the same people that some of these same institutions and experts that are okay with, or were okay, it seems like the science is changing again, with biologically born men competing in female sports and women's sports. These are the same people that, so why are we doing the appeal to motive fallacy? Institutions can be wrong. Once upon a time, they thought frontal lobotomies was a great way to treat people with bipolar. Let me show you what a frontal lobotomy is. You guys ready? Buckle up. So these same institutions, this isn't even 100 years ago. They got one of the Kennedy daughters with this. Did you guys know this? Why would we blindly trust these institutions? These are the same folks that were like, oh, you got bipolar? Yeah, we're going to do this to you. Look at this. This was the scientific consensus. Less than 100 years ago. We're not talking to the Stone Ages or the Dark Age. Like, this is recent. They were doing this to treat people. She was never the same. Look at this nonsense. So forgive me if I'm skeptical of your institutions.
So for you to stand here and to defend that, that's pretty messed up.
There is no objective moral standard unless some kind of God exists. Everything is just a matter of human opinion.
I don't think they got what his response were. He's saying, even if you feel mistreated, there is no standard for which you could even measure mistreatment if God doesn't exist. So we first have to acknowledge that there's a standard. And this person clearly did not come to have a conversation. This type of person, the activist type, is the new radical fundamentalist. Like this is dogmatic thinking all over again, because they didn't come to have dialogue. They came to preach. Let me know if you catch it. Let me know if you catch it.
And so when you hold up a sign that says that certain people have treated LGBTQ people wrongly,
well, they have, and there's so much evidence for it.
Mav, you might be exactly right about that. But
I know I am. I have experiences and data to back it up.
Okay, well, I'm sorry that people have treated you poorly, but
you don't have to go on and spread these bigoted viewpoints on YouTube and Facebook like you do. It's just a bunch of misinformation. You have no idea. You have blood on your hands.
Okay, Mav. Do you want to have a conversation, or you just want
to... No, I really just would like you to just apologize and turn around.
No. Did you guys catch it? No. I don't want to have a conversation. I'd like you to apologize and turn around. So she's saying, listen to how this argument is framed. So if I'm gonna be a Christian again, you're telling me I need to repent. Less than a minute later,
conversation, or you just want
to... No, I really just would like you to just apologize and turn around and see that what you're...
They say, why do I have to repent? But I'm really here to tell you to repent. I don't think I should have to repent, so I want you to repent. You don't get that you are just as fundamentalist and radical in your ideology as the Christians you think have been harmful and maybe perhaps have been harmful. It's literally the Spider-Man meme. It's literally this. That's what's happening here. why are you telling me if I have to repent? And then, no, but I think you should turn around and stop. This is hilarious. This is hilarious. The fact that I'm mad that I have to repent, yet I'm going to tell you to repent. This is incredible. This is incredible. I don't know if the lack of self-awareness is there, or if this is a spirit, or it's just brainworms. Like that you're so deep into your cult that you don't even understand how ridiculous this entire exchange sounds.
Mav, there's only harm if God exists. Harm is only evil if God exists. And so you're stealing.
Harm regardless if God exists or not.
Thank you, Mav. You're not interested. Thank you for coming.
How do you define what harm is if there is no objective standard? Because of what the collective decides? Because the institutions who've gotten things wrong before? Like, how did you come to any of these conclusions? How do you have any ground to stand on with any of this stuff? You don't.
I appreciate people coming here who have a different point of view, but it's got to be a dialogue. It can't be a monologue.
Come on.
And I think that, yes, people who identify as LGBT have been treated poorly.
I think most people would acknowledge that. I think most reasonable people would acknowledge that. That because they have been treated poorly, all types of people have been treated poorly. But listen to what he says next.
But I also think now that Christians are being treated poorly.
I mean, we just saw it. Why do I have to repent? No, you repent because you're wrong and I'm right. Same thing.
And both of them are wrong. We ought to respect people even if we disagree with them. But that's a moral category.
That's right.
And respect only makes sense as a moral category if there's a moral standard beyond us.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, everything's just a matter of opinion.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody says gay is good, that's a matter of opinion. If somebody says gay is bad, that's a matter of opinion. You have to have a standard. My question to anybody who disagrees is, what is your moral standard? If there is no God, there's no rights to anything. There's no Christian rights, there's no gay rights, there's no transgender rights, there's no human rights. It's just one person's opinion against another.
So how do we come to these standards? How do we come to these convictions of what is right and wrong? Now, if you're a follower of Jesus, we're going to say, well, they're ancient truths that have been revealed to us over time, and we would say we look to the scriptures and what they communicate regarding the New Testament Christian virtue ethic. However, if you remove the scriptures, then it really just becomes a matter of opinion. It becomes a matter of might is right. It becomes a matter of what leads to most human flourishing. After we looked at the video of Matt Dillahunty rage quitting, we saw that when he was presented with the same exact framework, but in a way that pulled the rug from underneath him in saying, I don't think what you are engaging in terms of dating a transformer, I don't think that leads to flourishing. I think in my secular humanistic world, that should be forbidden. That should be outlawed. It becomes really murky on what is and isn't relevant, tolerable, and appropriate, right? Because it's either my way is the highway or might is right. Whoever has the most power decides what's right and wrong. And we saw how those things go in society, right? You don't want just the powerful people deciding what's right and wrong, because people are naturally going to do what serves them best.
And when we say we're atheists and we start bringing moral categories into the conversation, right, I'm going to ask, what's the standard you're using?
Many people are going to say secular humanism, which leads to flourishing. But again, we saw the Matt Dillahunty debate and how that completely falls on its head.
It turns out the standard's stolen from God himself.
That's good. Frank Turek, who's a classical apologist, is actually using a presuppositional argument right here. It's a presuppositional apologetics argument, which is interesting that he goes here.
And that's what I cover in the book, Stealing from God, Why Atheists Need God to Make Their Case. We might agree with a lot of stuff Mav said, that people have been treated immorally, but unless you have a moral standard outside of yourself that we're all obligated to obey, it wasn't really immoral. Do you see the point?
Shout out to Frank Turek. Amazing video. Yeah, I think, listen, generally speaking, when you get into these sorts of conversations, it's going to come back down to subjective experience, what you think leads to flourishing, or avoiding things that you think leads to harm. The issue with that is that the things that you think lead to flourishing for one set of people may not lead to flourishing for all of society. We're seeing this right now with decreasing birth rates and us not being able to continue our population, while 1 out of 5 Gen Zers are identifying as a part of the LGTV community. That does not lead to flourishing in a very pragmatic sense. We remove God from it. If we're not able to maintain our population and replace our population, that is extremely problematic. Look at what's happening in South Korea. Look at what's happening in Japan. Look at what's happening in China. Now, the flip side of this is harm. What brings harm? The thing that may bring harm in the short term can actually lead to flourishing in the long term. Meaning that sometimes the wounds of a friend are better than the kisses from an enemy. Sometimes we tell people that what you're doing is good and affirming them when really what they're doing is harmful, but you just want to be cool. We've all seen this. We've all seen it. You know how we've seen this? The person in your life that you know is an addict that wants to be affirmed in their addiction. And sometimes it's difficult to decipher. Is this addiction or is them just, they just kind of go overboard? They went overboard. Oh, well, it's okay. You know, you're not a drunk. You just partied a little too hard that one time. And then they want to be affirmed in said addiction. And so what happens? That addiction takes root and eventually so am I wrong if I rebuke that person earlier on and say, you cannot behave this way? This is going to lead to harm. If you continue down this path, it is going to harm you. I know it's fun in the moment, and I know you think it's causing flourishing in the moment, but ultimately it's going to lead you to death. You guys don't know how many people I grew up with who came over from the Soviet Union when me and my family came over. There's a lot of folks that they escaped communism and they came to San Diego as refugees. So they escaped the pogroms of Baku and they escaped communism. And right after we came, Soviet Union fell. And you know what happened? A lot of these folks partied, and a lot of them partied a little too hard. And unfortunately, a handful of them ended up dying in drunk driving accidents. Like, I saw this. I remember being 7, 8 years old and my mom getting the phone call that her closest friend in the neighborhood husband had just died in a drunk driving accident. Like, I remember that vividly, and going over there and them not believing it and seeing that their kids cry and that family never being the same. I remember that. As a child, I remember that. And so was it loving to tell that, to affirm that person in their alcoholism, in their celebration? Was it loving to say, yeah, you know, just go on, man. We're partying. It's all good. We're in America now. Life is great. We have all these liberties and freedoms we didn't have back there. We made it. So we're going to celebrate until it does you in. I mean, listen, I was talking about celebrate. I would say about the Post Malone song. It's a celebration. Work so hard for God to make. Post Malone is going through a public thing right now where all the beer that he was the freaking Stone Cold Steve Austin of pop music. You guys remember Stone Cold Steve Austin? He break the beers together. Dun-dun-dun-dun. Break the beers together. Drink all the beer. You guys remember Stone Cold Steve Austin? Post Malone was that. And then his doctor sat him down and was like, your liver's crap. You got to stop. And he was glorifying something that felt good, that he thought was okay and he needed to be affirmed in. And then his doctor sat him down and was like, yo, your liver's crap. Your kidneys are crap. You got to stop. And so now you're seeing someone that has celebrated alcoholism, always had a beer in his hand, and is now having to reel it back in, drinking more water, getting healthy, losing weight. He's lost like, I'm going to say 30, 40 pounds. When you get into this whole affirmed harm, it can get really murky, man. It can get really, really murky. It's such a bizarre standard. We see, according to the Bible, that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask Him to move on my behalf. And two, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when He answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used for my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.